Sir, you match the description of a robbery suspect. You're under arrest.
Are you serious? I'm in a wheelchair. I'm paralyzed. How am I supposed to rob anyone? Think about it!
Nice try. Stand up right now or I'll remove you myself.
I can't stand! Stop.
A cop showed up at a hospital park one Tuesday afternoon. He got a call about a robbery. Black male in a hoodie, they told him. When Officer Matthew Reynolds arrived, he saw a man in a wheelchair wearing a black hoodie. He didn't ask any questions. He just walked straight to the wheelchair and made a decision in his head. But here's the thing. He got it completely wrong. And it was going to cost him everything. Leonard Vaughn was 34 years old. He used to be in the Army. He did 2 tours in Afghanistan. That's where everything changed for him. An explosion happened called an IED. It was outside a place called Kandahar in 2018. The blast destroyed his legs. Not destroyed like gone, but destroyed like they stopped working. For 6 years, he lived in a wheelchair. He got good at it though. Every Tuesday was the same routine. Hospital appointment at 3:30. Same building. Same park outside. Same waiting for his driver. The day started like every other Tuesday. Leonard rolled himself out through the automatic doors. It was 4:47 p.m. He wore a black hoodie because it was a little chilly. His jeans hung loose over legs he couldn't feel anymore. His sneakers were tied before the accident. He couldn't tie them himself now. A medical wristband was still on his wrist from his appointment that day. His phone was in his hand. His bag was on his lap. His wallet was in there. His medical card was in there. His appointment papers were in there too. He parked his wheelchair near a bench. He texted his driver. "I'm ready when you are," he said. The driver texted back. 15 minutes away. Leonard put his phone down and waited. He'd waited 100 times before. This was just another waiting. That's when he saw it happen. About 30 feet away, near the other side of the park, a man in a black hoodie walked up behind a woman on a bench. He grabbed her purse, just grabbed it right out of her hands, and took off running toward the parking lot. The woman screamed. Other people looked, but nobody moved fast enough. Leonard didn't think twice. He pulled his phone back out. He dialed 911. A voice answered. 911, what's your emergency? I just saw a robbery, Leonard said. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. At Memorial Hospital Park, right outside the main entrance. A black male in a hoodie just grabbed a woman's purse, and he's running toward the parking lot. Can you describe the suspect? The dispatcher asked. Black male hoodie, Leonard said fast. He's heading toward the parking structure right now. Leonard was still on the phone. Still watching. Still describing. That's when the robber looked back. He saw Leonard in his wheelchair. He saw Leonard holding the phone. He knew exactly what Leonard was doing. He was calling the cops. And Leonard was in a wheelchair. Which meant Leonard was an easy target. The robber changed direction. He ran straight toward Leonard instead. Leonard saw him coming, but he couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't run. He couldn't get away. The robber reached him in seconds, grabbed the bag off Leonard's lap with one hand, snatched the phone right out of Leonard's other hand, cut off the 911 call in the middle, and ran again. Without saying a word, Leonard shouted after him, "Hey, stop!" But the robber was already gone. Into the parking lot, taking everything. Leonard's bag, Leonard's phone, Leonard's wallet, everything. Leonard sat there in his wheelchair, breathing hard, his hands empty. He looked around at the people in the park. The woman who got robbed was sitting on a bench, crying. A few people were standing around her, but nobody had chased the robber. Nobody had stopped him. And Leonard couldn't chase him either. He sat in his wheelchair, paralyzed in more ways than one. And he waited for the police to come help him. 6 minutes later, a patrol car pulled in. Officer Matthew Reynolds got out. He was 31 years old. He'd been a cop for 6 years. Over those 6 years, something bad had happened. He'd gotten complaints. 4 of them, all from black men. They said he used too much force. They said he made assumptions because of race. They said he made situations worse. All 4 complaints were investigated. All 4 were dismissed. But the pattern was there, in his file, in his record, where everyone could see it. But nobody did anything about it. When the robbery call came in that day, Reynolds heard one thing: black male in a hoodie. He didn't ask for more details. He didn't think about it. He just drove over. He pulled into the hospital parking lot. He looked at the park. His eyes locked onto Leonard. Black male in a wheelchair, wearing a black hoodie. Right there in the open. Reynolds got out of his car. He walked straight to Leonard. He didn't talk to anyone else. He didn't ask the woman what happened. He didn't look around for even 10 seconds. He had already decided what he was looking at. He stopped in front of Leonard's wheelchair. He looked down. "You're under arrest," he said. Leonard looked up confused. "What?" Reynolds cut him off. His voice was loud, aggressive. "You match the description. Black male in a hoodie. Get out of the chair now." Leonard's heart started pounding. This wasn't right. This wasn't what should happen. "Officer, I'm not the robber," Leonard said. "I'm the one who called 911. The robber just robbed me too, and I'm paralyzed from the waist down. I can't stand." Reynolds crossed his arms. His expression got harder. "Yeah, right, sure you are. You can't fool me." Dispatch was clear. Black male hoodie. You match the description perfectly. Leonard tried again. His voice was steady, but urgent. "Officer, I was waiting for my driver. After the hospital, I saw the robbery happen and I called it in. Then the guy robbed me. I'm paralyzed. I can't walk." Reynolds leaned in. His tone turned sharp. "Mean. Shut up and stand up before I drag you up myself." Leonard felt panic rising. He didn't have his phone. The robber took it. He didn't have his bag. The robber took that too. He had no way to prove anything. "I don't have my phone or my bag," Leonard said. "The robber took them, but you can verify my story inside the hospital. I just had an appointment. They have all my records." Reynolds ignored him completely. "How are you going to be a robber when you're paralyzed?" Reynolds asked. Leonard thought, wait. Maybe Reynolds was starting to get it. Maybe Reynolds was listening. "Exactly," Leonard said. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. I can't." Reynolds interrupted. His voice was flat. "Certain." "Exactly, because you're not paralyzed. I see you fooling around." Leonard stared at him. "What?" Reynolds reached for his radio. He called for backup. Then he turned back to Leonard. His hand moved to his holster. "Get up now." A woman nearby stepped forward. She'd seen the whole robbery. Her voice was shaking, but clear. "Officer, he's telling the truth. He got robbed, and he's in a wheelchair. He's clearly paralyzed." Another person spoke up. "We saw the whole thing. The guy in the hoodie robbed him and ran that way." He pointed toward the parking lot. Reynolds turned to them. His voice was hard. "Stay out of it. I have this under control." He turned back to Leonard. His voice dropped. "Colder. Get up now, or I'm dragging you out of that chair myself." Leonard's voice rose. Desperation cut through. "I'm paralyzed. I can't get up." That's when Matthew Reynolds lost his patience. He grabbed Leonard by the arm. He yanked him forward. With so much force, Leonard's body came forward, but his legs didn't. They couldn't. He fell hard onto the pavement. His legs twisted beneath him. Pain shot through his lower back, where his injury was. He hit the concrete. He shouted, his voice breaking, "I can't walk, this is assault." Reynolds didn't stop. He flipped Leonard onto his stomach. He pulled Leonard's arms behind his back. He cuffed him, roughly, on the pavement. Leonard's face was pressed against concrete. His wheelchair tipped over beside him, one wheel still spinning. Bystanders were shouting now. Some pulled out their phones, started recording. Backup sirens were getting closer. And Leonard Vaughn, a decorated Army veteran, a man who lost his legs defending his country, was handcuffed on the ground, outside the hospital where he just had his checkup, treated like a criminal, by an officer who refused to listen to a single word he said. Leonard lay on the pavement, face pressed against concrete, hands cuffed behind his back, his legs twisted beneath him. His wheelchair was tipped over, 3 feet away, one wheel still spinning slowly. Officer Matthew Reynolds stood over him, one hand on Leonard's shoulder, keeping him pinned. Leonard could hear backup sirens, getting closer. With every second that passed, bystanders were still shouting. A woman near the bench, yelling at Reynolds, "Let Leonard go. He's been robbed. He's clearly paralyzed." An older man was holding up his phone, recording, telling Reynolds, "You're making a huge mistake." Another person was trying to explain. The real robber ran toward the parking structure. He's long gone by now. Reynolds ignored all of them. He kept Leonard pinned on the ground, waiting for backup. A backup cruiser pulled up. Less than 2 minutes later, Sergeant Mike Dawson stepped out. He was 43 years old, 15 years on the force. He'd seen things go wrong before. He'd learned to recognize when something didn't add up. The moment he stepped out of his car, he saw it. A man in a wheelchair, tipped over. Another man handcuffed on pavement. A crowd of bystanders, yelling at Reynolds. That instinct kicked in. Hard. Dawson walked over quickly. His eyes moved. Between Reynolds, between Leonard, between the wheelchair. "What's going on here, Reynolds?" he asked. Reynolds looked up at him. His expression was defensive, but confident. "Suspect matches the description, Sarge. Black male in a hoodie. He's resisting." Leonard turned his head as much as he could. His voice was strained, but clear. "Sergeant, I'm paralyzed. I'm a veteran. I was robbed. My name is Leonard Vaughn. My bag was stolen. That's why I don't have my ID. But you can verify everything inside the hospital. I just had an appointment today. They have all my records." Reynolds cut in. "He's lying, Sarge. He matches the description perfectly. Black male in a hoodie. That's what dispatch said." Dawson looked down at Leonard. His eyes moved to Leonard's legs. They were lying at awkward angles on the pavement. Not natural at all. He looked at the tipped wheelchair. He looked at the medical wristband, still visible on Leonard's left wrist. Then he looked back at Reynolds. "Did anyone else see what happened?" Dawson asked. He raised his voice so the bystanders could hear. The woman who got robbed first spoke up immediately. Her voice was shaking, but angry. "I saw everything, that man right there." She pointed at Leonard. "He got robbed. The guy who robbed me came back and robbed him too. He took his phone, his bag, and he's paralyzed. He's been in that wheelchair the whole time." The older man with the phone added, "The real robber ran that way." He pointed toward the parking structure. "That guy on the ground didn't do anything. He called 911. He's the victim." Another bystander spoke up, a younger woman who'd been sitting on a bench. "I watched the whole thing. The robber took his stuff and ran. This officer showed up and went straight to him without asking any questions. He dragged him out of his wheelchair. We all saw it." Dawson's jaw tightened. He looked at Reynolds again. "You dragged him out of his wheelchair?" Reynolds's confidence wavered. "Just for a second." But he pushed through it. He was resisting. He wouldn't stand up when I told him to. Leonard's voice came from the ground, louder this time, edged with pain. "I told him I was paralyzed. I told him I couldn't stand. I can't walk, Sergeant. My legs don't work." Dawson crouched down next to Leonard, close enough to see the strain in his face, close enough to see his legs, not moving at all. Despite their awkward position, Dawson had been a cop long enough to know what real paralysis looks like. And this wasn't someone faking. This was someone who genuinely couldn't move his lower body. Dawson stood back up. He looked at Reynolds. His expression wasn't questioning anymore. It was certain. "Stay here, don't move him." Reynolds opened his mouth to say something, but Dawson was already walking toward the hospital entrance. Dawson pushed through the automatic doors. He walked straight to the front desk. A nurse was sitting behind the counter. He pulled out his badge, held it up. "I need information on a patient, Leonard Vaughn. He says he had an appointment here today." The nurse looked at the badge, then at her computer. She typed the name. A few seconds later, she nodded. "Leonard Vaughn. Yes, he had a physical therapy appointment this afternoon at 3:30. He's a regular patient here. He's been coming for about 6 years." Dawson leaned forward slightly. "Can you tell me why he's a patient here?" The nurse looked at the screen again. "Spinal injury. He's paralyzed from the waist down. He's a veteran. The injury happened during his service." Dawson felt his stomach drop. He looked back toward the automatic doors, toward the park, where Reynolds still had Leonard, pinned on the pavement, in handcuffs. "Thank you," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked back outside. When Dawson came back through the doors, Reynolds looked up, like he was waiting for confirmation, like Reynolds had been right all along. But the expression on Dawson's face told him different. The exact opposite. Dawson walked straight to Reynolds. His voice was low, but hard enough to cut through steel. "Uncuff him right now." Reynolds blinked. "What?" "I said uncuff him now." Reynolds hesitated, just for a second too long. Dawson's voice got louder. "That's an order, Reynolds. Uncuff him immediately." Reynolds finally moved. He pulled out his keys. He crouched down. He unlocked the handcuffs from Leonard's wrists. Leonard brought his arms forward slowly, wincing. Circulation came back into his hands, and Dawson stepped in to help him sit up. Dawson crouched down next to Leonard. He spoke quietly. His voice carried weight. "Not anger, but something closer to regret. "Mr. Vaughn, I am deeply sorry for what just happened to you. This should never have occurred." Leonard was breathing hard, his hands shaking slightly. He rubbed his wrists, where the cuffs had been. "He dragged me out of my chair. I told him I was paralyzed. I told him I was robbed. He didn't listen to a single word I said." Dawson nodded. "I know. I verified everything with the hospital. You're a patient there. You're paralyzed. You're a veteran, and you were robbed." He looked over his shoulder at Reynolds, who was standing a few feet away, looking like he'd been hit by a truck. This was wrong, all of it. Dawson helped Leonard back into his wheelchair, righting it first, making sure it was stable, before carefully lifting Leonard, positioning him back into the seat. Leonard settled into the chair with visible relief, his legs finally in a position that didn't hurt his spine. Reynolds tried to speak. His voice was defensive, stammering. "I didn't know. He should have made it clearer from the beginning. I was just following the description." Dawson turned on him. The look on his face made Reynolds stop talking immediately. "You assaulted a paralyzed veteran in front of witnesses. All of this is on camera." He pointed at the bystanders, still holding up their phones, still recording. "You dragged a disabled man out of his wheelchair because you refused to listen when he told you the truth." Reynolds looked around, at the phones, at the bystanders, staring at him, expressions ranging from anger to disgust. The reality of what he just did started to sink in. Dawson pulled out his radio. He called for EMS to come check Leonard for injuries. Then he turned back to the bystanders. He asked them to stay so he could take their statements. Several of them agreed immediately. They offered to send him the videos. They had recorded everything. Leonard sat in his wheelchair, his wrists still red from the handcuffs, his back aching from being pulled out of the chair, thrown onto the pavement. He looked at Dawson. He said quietly, "I want to file a formal complaint, and I want his body cam footage." Dawson nodded. "You'll have it. I'm making sure this gets reported exactly as it happened." Reynolds was still standing there, looking like he wanted to say something that would make this go away. But there was nothing he could say that would undo what had been recorded by a dozen phones and his own body cam. Dawson told Reynolds to return to his vehicle and wait there. Reynolds walked away slowly, and Leonard watched him go, knowing this was far from over. The EMS team arrived a few minutes later. They checked Leonard for injuries. They found bruising on his wrists, scrapes on his arms, from being dragged across the pavement. They recommended he go back inside the hospital to get his spine checked, to make sure the fall didn't cause additional damage. Leonard agreed, but before he went back inside, he looked at Dawson one more time. This happens to people every day, doesn't it? People who don't have a hospital right behind them to verify their story. People who don't have witnesses with cameras. Dawson didn't have an answer. He just nodded, and Leonard wheeled himself back toward the hospital entrance, knowing what just happened to him was going to follow Matthew Reynolds for the rest of his life. Leonard went back inside Memorial Hospital. The EMS team wheeled him directly to the emergency department to have his spine checked. The doctors ran tests to make sure the fall didn't cause additional damage to his already hurt spinal cord. The X-rays came back. No new fractures, but bruising on his back and strain on his spine. He would be in significant pain. For the next several days, they gave him medication, wrapped his wrists, where the handcuffs left deep red marks. They told him, follow up with his regular doctor within the week. While Leonard was being examined, Sergeant Mike Dawson stayed outside, in the park, collecting statements from every witness who saw what happened. He spoke to the woman who got robbed first. She described the actual robber. Taller than Leonard, younger, different build, wearing a dark gray hoodie, not black. He spoke to the older man, who recorded everything. On his phone, he showed Dawson the footage of Reynolds dragging Leonard out of his wheelchair, throwing him to the ground. He spoke to the younger woman, who'd been sitting on a bench. She told Dawson, Reynolds walked straight to Leonard, without asking a single question to anyone else first. Dawson collected contact information from 6 different witnesses, and all 6 of them said the same thing. Leonard Vaughn had been sitting in his wheelchair, minding his own business, waiting for his ride. The real robber had stolen the woman's purse, then come back and robbed Leonard. Leonard had called 911. An officer, Matthew Reynolds, had arrived, ignored all the evidence in front of him, and assaulted a paralyzed man because he fit a vague description. By the time Leonard came back out of the hospital, 2 hours later, Dawson had already filed his preliminary report. He flagged the incident for internal affairs review. He requested Reynolds' body cam footage be secured immediately and not be deleted or altered in any way. Dawson met Leonard at the hospital entrance. As Leonard wheeled himself back out, Leonard's driver had finally arrived and was waiting in the pickup area. But Leonard stopped when he saw Dawson and rolled his wheelchair over to him. "How are you feeling?" Dawson asked. Leonard's face was tired. There was tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "I've been better. They said no new damage to my spine, but my back is going to hurt for a while, and my wrists." He held them up. They were wrapped in bandages. "Are going to bruise pretty badly." Dawson nodded. "I've collected statements from everyone who saw what happened. I've also secured the body cam footage from Officer Reynolds. Everything he did is on camera. Everything you said is on camera, and I've already flagged this for internal affairs." Leonard looked at him for a long moment. "What happens now?" Dawson took a breath. "Honestly, this is going to go all the way up. Reynolds assaulted a disabled veteran. He ignored multiple witnesses. He refused to verify your story, even when you told him exactly how to do it. He violated your rights, and he caused you physical harm. That's not something the department can sweep under the rug, especially not with this much evidence." Leonard's jaw tightened. "Good, because I'm not letting this go." Dawson met his eyes. "You shouldn't. What he did to you was wrong, and I'm going to make sure my report reflects every detail." Leonard nodded slowly. "I want to file a formal complaint, and I want a copy of everything, the body cam footage, the witness statements, all of it." "You'll have it," Dawson said. "I'll make sure it's sent to you within the week." Leonard wheeled himself toward his waiting driver. But before he got into the van, he turned back to Dawson one more time. "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I got blown up defending this country. I lost the use of my legs, and today I got dragged out of my wheelchair and thrown on the pavement like a criminal because a cop saw a black man in a hoodie and decided that was all the evidence he needed." Dawson didn't respond. There was nothing he could say that would make that statement any less true. Leonard continued, his voice steady, but carrying weight that made every word land hard. My wheelchair wasn't enough. My medical wristband wasn't enough. Me telling him I was paralyzed wasn't enough. The witnesses telling him I'd been robbed weren't enough. Nothing was enough except what he had already decided about me the second he saw my skin. He paused, looking past Dawson, toward the spot on the pavement where he had been handcuffed less than 3 hours earlier. I'm filing a lawsuit, federal civil rights violation, excessive force, disability discrimination, assault, all of it, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what happened here today. Dawson nodded. You have every right to do that. Leonard looked at him one more time. I don't want an apology from him. I don't want him to say he's sorry. I want accountability. I want him to lose his badge, and I want the department to understand that this can't keep happening. He wheeled himself to the van. His driver helped him transfer from the wheelchair into the passenger seat. Dawson watched the van pull away. Then he turned back toward his cruiser, where Matthew Reynolds was still sitting, waiting, probably hoping this would somehow blow over. It wouldn't. By that evening, the videos had already started to spread. The bystanders who had recorded the incident posted the footage online, with captions like, "Cop drags paralyzed veteran out of wheelchair. Officer assaults disabled man for sitting in a park." The videos were shared hundreds of times within the first few hours. By the next morning, they had been viewed over 3 million times. Matthew Reynolds' name was attached to every single one. And Leonard Vaughn's face, the face of a man who had served his country, lost the use of his legs, and then been treated like a criminal for sitting in a wheelchair while black, became the face of a story that people couldn't look away from. The Charlotte Police Department issued a statement the next day, calling the incident under investigation and promising transparency. But the videos didn't lie. The witnesses didn't lie. And the body cam footage that Dawson had secured showed every single second of what Reynolds had done. Leonard hired a civil rights attorney. Within 48 hours, the attorney reviewed the evidence, body cam footage, bystander videos, witness statements, medical records from Memorial Hospital, confirming Leonard's paralysis and his status as a patient, and told Leonard this was one of the clearest cases of excessive force and disability discrimination he had seen in his career. The lawsuit was filed 1 week later, and Matthew Reynolds, who had dragged a paralyzed veteran out of his wheelchair because he refused to believe that a black man could be telling the truth, was about to learn exactly how expensive his assumptions were going to be. The videos went viral faster than anyone expected. Within 72 hours, the footage of Officer Matthew Reynolds dragging Leonard Vaughn out of his wheelchair and throwing him onto the pavement had been viewed over 20 million times across multiple platforms. Every major news outlet picked up the story. The image that spread everywhere was a freeze frame from one of the bystander videos. Leonard on the ground, his legs twisted beneath him, his wheelchair tipped over, and Reynolds standing over him with handcuffs in his hand. The headlines wrote themselves. Cop drags paralyzed veteran out of wheelchair. Officer assaults disabled Army vet after robbery. Paralyzed man handcuffed on pavement for fitting vague description. The Charlotte Police Department tried to control the narrative with carefully worded statements, but nothing they said could undo what millions of people had already seen with their own eyes. Matthew Reynolds was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours of the incident. The internal affairs investigation moved quickly because the evidence was overwhelming. Reynolds' body cam footage showed everything. Leonard telling him repeatedly he was paralyzed. Leonard explaining he had been robbed. Bystanders shouting Leonard was the victim, and Reynolds ignoring all of it and physically dragging Leonard out of his wheelchair. The investigation also pulled Reynolds' personnel file, and what they found made the situation even worse. Over his 6 years on the force, Reynolds had been the subject of 4 formal complaints, all from black men, all claiming he had used excessive force or made racially motivated assumptions. All 4 complaints had been documented and dismissed without serious consequences. The pattern had been there the entire time, written into his record, and the department had done nothing to address it. 3 weeks after the incident, Matthew Reynolds was terminated. The official findings stated he violated departmental policy on use of force. He demonstrated a pattern of racially biased policing. He committed assault on a disabled person, and he failed to verify facts before taking action. He was 31 years old, with 6 years of law enforcement experience, and no other police department in the state would hire him. His name was permanently attached to one of the most widely shared examples of police brutality and disability discrimination ever caught on camera. Leonard Vaughn filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Reynolds and the Charlotte Police Department. The lawsuit alleged excessive force, unlawful detention, violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, failure to accommodate a disability, assault and battery, and deliberate indifference to Leonard's civil rights. The city's legal team reviewed the evidence, body cam footage, multiple bystander videos, 6 witness statements, and medical records from Memorial Hospital, and made the decision to settle rather than go to trial. They knew no jury would side with an officer who had dragged a paralyzed veteran out of his wheelchair in front of a dozen cameras. The settlement was finalized for $10.1 million, one of the largest excessive force settlements in the state's history. Leonard used a portion of the settlement to establish the Vaughn Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provides legal support and resources to disabled veterans who experience discrimination or abuse. He became a vocal advocate for police reform, disability rights, and accountability in law enforcement. He testified before city councils and state legislatures about the need for better training on disability awareness and the dangers of racially biased policing. The Charlotte Police Department implemented sweeping reforms. In the aftermath, all officers were required to complete mandatory training on disability rights and the Americans with Disabilities Act. New protocols were established, requiring officers to verify claims and gather evidence before using physical force. An independent civilian review board was created to handle complaints of excessive force and discrimination. Body cam footage was audited quarterly to identify patterns of biased behavior before they escalated into violence. 3 other officers with complaint histories similar to Reynolds were quietly removed from active patrol and reassigned to administrative duties. The real robber, who had stolen Leonard's bag and phone, was caught 2 weeks after the incident during an unrelated arrest. He was identified through surveillance footage from the hospital parking lot and was found in possession of stolen items from multiple victims, including Leonard's phone. He was charged with multiple counts of robbery and sentenced to 8 years in prison. Leonard's belongings were recovered and returned to him. 5 years later, Leonard Vaughn still lives in Charlotte. He still goes to Memorial Hospital every week for his checkups. He still uses a wheelchair, and he still remembers every second of the day he was dragged out of that wheelchair and thrown onto the pavement for the crime of being black and fitting a description that never actually fit him at all. Matthew Reynolds has not worked in law enforcement since his termination. He appealed his firing twice and was denied both times. He tried to find work in private security and was rejected repeatedly. Once background checks revealed his history, his name is still the first result. When you search for examples of police violence against disabled people, the case became a landmark example, used in police academies and civil rights training programs across the country. It is shown as a clear demonstration of what happens when officers ignore evidence, refuse to listen, and let bias override judgment. The lesson is simple, but it costs $10.1 million, one man's career, and a paralyzed veteran's dignity. To teach it, a wheelchair is not invisible. Paralysis is not a lie. And refusing to listen costs more than anyone should ever have to pay. If you believe a decorated veteran should never be dragged out of his wheelchair for sitting in a park while black, share this story. What reforms do you think every police department needs to protect disabled people from this kind of violence? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story reminded you that assumptions destroy lives and ignoring the truth has a price, subscribe. We're not stopping until every officer understands that a badge is not permission to ignore what's right in front of you.